that really did exist. They just found it, and if you look in the last months, 2 months ago in National Geographic, you will see pictures of the largest cave in the world.
Wow.
It has its own weather system. It is so large.
My goodness.
So there's some interesting things in there.
Yeah.
But the most interesting thing is, Sam, welcome to Vietnam. We're going to tell you about it.
Yes. So, can we go around? Start with you, Nancy. Tell us about you, what your involvement was. Just real quick, we'll go around so we just know who's talking, and then tell us real quick too what you're doing now. So.
Okay. Well, I was a nurse here in Houston and part of West Memorial, and we got the call. Cal got the call in the middle of the night, and you know, how could he say no to Ralph? You know.
Really?
Yeah. So we had a couple of weeks to prepare because you all went to Fort Chaffee. And and Betty Lou and Paul were gracious enough to say, okay, open the ranch, and here we go. So we had to start getting
That was
ready.
the key thing. If you didn't have the ranch, they would have gone to Guam, I guess.
Yeah, who knows?
Okay.
Yeah. So we expected that we would get the medical information from Fort Chaffee on everybody, because that's one of the reasons they went there, was to be cleared medically. Well, that didn't happen. We got nothing. So somehow I got put in charge of the medical end of it, and I thought, okay, we have to get some doctors out here to just do screening physicals to make sure there's no really bad needs among the kids. I mean, sniffles and that we can handle, but
Sure.
so I'm calling doctors. I remember calling Juanita Hart,
Oh, my. Yeah.
who was a psychiatrist, and she said, but I'm a psychiatrist. And I very flippantly said to her, didn't you learn how to do physicals in medical school? I said, that's all we
No.
need. And I think I probably said something similar to you, but I'm a surgeon. But, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was, and then I also was involved in trying to set up, the Vietnamese ladies were so gracious and so wanting to do for themselves. But you can imagine coming to a country where you have no knowledge of the language, reading or writing, and you have this array of bottles and stuff, and they don't know what to use to do the dishes, what to use to clean the toilet, you know, any of that kind of thing. So it's like, okay, well, get some magazines, cut out pictures, paste them to the bottle. So that was how they learned how to use.
Great.
And so once they had the pictures, they were self-sufficient and, you know, could take care of washing the dishes and cleaning the place, and which they did. They kept it spick and span. And so that was kind of how I was involved. I was also involved in, we took some of the kids into town. I remember taking a group of maybe 5 or 6 to the Galleria.
Ooh.
Obviously, they had never seen an escalator before. And one of the little guys was standing at the top, and he grabbed a hold of the railing and was going over the thing.
Catapulted.
Yeah, I had to grab him by the seat of the pants and pull him back. So, but introducing them to ice cream, they'd never had a hamburger, you know, all kinds of things. But the most thing I remember was we met them at the airport with 3 buses.
Which airport do you remember?
Intercontinental.
All right.
Yes. And Ray Graham,
Yes.
had a clothing store at the mall. So he had made arrangements for us all to stop there for lunch. So,
To get clothes.
well, to get food, because
Okay.
they'd been at
Traveling.
yeah. So we ordered fish and rice and, I don't know, some kind of vegetable. for everybody, because we thought going through the cafeteria line is never gonna work.
No.
But everybody was organized, because one of the older children had responsibility for one of the younger. It may not have been the same sex,
Yeah.
and that's important for the next thing I'm gonna say. But they took care of them. But everybody was getting their stuff, and all of a sudden I thought, okay, these kids and everybody they've been on a bus to get to the airport. They went from the airport to another airport, got on another bus. There's no potty break. And I thought, okay, so I said something to somebody who said something to somebody else, and it finally got translated into Vietnamese, and they said the word bathroom, and everybody, and here we
There's a
were.
good story in here about that. He was riding as trail boss,
Yeah.
and they come in the Piccadilly cafeteria.
Oh,
Yeah.
And those kids, somehow the word got around, thanks to Nancy, that
And-
behind those two little doors that had funny looking signs on them, didn't make any difference. It was just what this colony of fire ants was looking
Oh,
for.
yeah, and it didn't matter whether it was his or hers,
Yeah.
you know.
It's just a
And
restaurant.
so I finally stood outside the door and asked all the Americans to find another bathroom for the time being.
That's great.
But then everybody got back in, got their food, was sitting around the table, and nobody's eating. And I thought, they've gotta be starving. They were waiting for somebody to say grace.
Oh.
Wow.
And so somebody finally did, and they ate, and, yeah.
What a blessing.
So those are the things, some of the things that I remember.
That's great.
Now I'm living in San Antonio, moved there for a nursing job. Retired several years ago, after 50 years of nursing. That was enough. And I'm living in a 55-plus community. Everybody has their own home, takes care of it, lots of activities. I'm currently in charge of our big arts and crafts fair that's coming up
All
in
right.
October, and you know,
She's a genius.
doing all these crazy things. So
Fantastic.
I don't, you know, I've had umpteen surgeries on my legs, so I ended up in a wheelchair. It's easier for me to get around. I use crutches, but then I don't have my hands, so.
Yay, thanks for coming.
Oh, you're
So glad
welcome.
you're here.
And the drive was good yesterday, and thanks to Ralph and Ruth, I had a nice bed to sleep in and all that.
With
So,
2 dogs.
yes, the dogs are taken care of, so.
Fabulous. Excellent day. Next. This is great.
That's
Well-
great, Nancy.
I don't remember how I first knew that the orphans were coming, but I obviously already knew because Paul and I had talked about we would have room for all of them at the farm. And then one day Ralph Neighbor called and said, Betty Lou, we have these orphans coming. Would you be willing to take them at Touch Ranch? And I said, yes, we would. And he said, well, it is a good thing. Because yesterday I gave your name, Cal Thomas's and Ray Graham's to the State Department.
Oh, boy.
Making it happen.
So,
Well, we couldn't say no to Ralph.
Yeah, it's the second time I've heard that.
I had really thought of it before he called, to be honest.
You thought,
Yeah.
So, the church really was wonderful. They went out there, they painted, they cleaned that barn out. You probably stayed in the house since you were so little. The bigger boys stayed in the barn, and,
Women stayed in the house and
the
the
women,
staff
the
stayed in
younger
the
children, the
trailer
girls
house.
stayed in the house, and the big boys stayed in the barn.
And I
we
heard
got-
some of them actually had to stay outside of the barn because there
Well,
really
that would have
wasn't.
been their own choice.
Okay.
Yeah, they had a bed in the
They had a
barn.
bed in
Everybody
the
had a
barn.
bed in the barn. We had
You
these
know who one of those was.
bunk beds.
bunk beds, one on top of another, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we got from the federal government, I think.
No, they came from the University of Houston.
Mm-mm.
The
The
athletic,
Royce Bond had a warehouse, and he took
Oh.
trucks and went to Austin and brought all those cots back. You weren't here?
No, you weren't here. We heard.
You were in Vietnam.
He
You
was
were in
in Singapore.
Singapore, so you didn't know what happened.
Yeah.
We went to
But we got
Austin
them
and
from
brought
the
back
federal
all
government.
these cots and used them, because we had to take them back too. And,
That was what,
It was just-
University of Houston?
No, it's
No,
not
it's
the US
Austin.
government.
They had
Yeah.
built the new dorm, and they had all of this surplus left from the old
that
dorms.
isn't, that
No,
isn't
that's
the way I
not true at all.
remember
It was
That's
the
not
US
what I
government.
remember.
It was US government. We
Like
got
the
all the
National
government.
Guard or something.
That's what
Well,
I
they did
thought.
one thing right.
I don't know, what, none of
I
that
messed
really
you up
matters.
on that.
That doesn't really
That's
matter.
all
It
right.
doesn't really matter.
That's an
They
insignificant
had cots, they were in the
detail.
barn.
They
Yeah.
had bunk beds in the barn,
Yeah.
everybody had their own bed.
And I really count this
Oh, I didn't
as one of the
realize
most wonderful experiences of my life.
Mm.
It was
Yeah.
wonderful. The church turned out, now I did learn something about donating stuff. It was on the radio, and so people donated. 99% of it was junk that we had to throw out. So I'm very careful now about what I donate to somebody.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's amazing.
Here, these little tiny people are coming, and we had huge worn-out clothes donated to us, so
Yeah.
anyway, I'm very careful. But,
And y'all were
probably-
members at West Memorial?
Yes.
Yes.
We probably spent a couple of weeks, I don't remember what day you called, but we probably spent at least a couple of weeks out there, night and day, cleaning and painting and getting everything ready, sorting out the clothes that we did have and, buying things. We made arrangements. The wholesale grocer in Brenham was willing to let us buy our food there,
Wholesale.
wholesale.
Yeah,
Nice.
nice.
And,
What a blessing.
And,
Well, when you're feeding 100 people.
now, I didn't
And
remember
the
about
bags of
pasting the
rice.
labels on the bottles. I stayed out there night and day so I could help them, because if somebody called on the phone, they couldn't really
Yeah.
answer the phone, and so I was out there all the time. And we just had many volunteers come. Harold Tate had a daughter that was with Wycliffe Translators, and she and her husband happened to be in town. They came out, and they were skilled in picking up the language that was being spoken and helping them. And I don't know, I could just talk on and on about the
Yeah,
things that
so
happened
many
out there. It was just such a wonderful experience, and some interesting things happened. The children all rode on those buses out to the ranch, but Mr. High rode with me. And he was amazed. He would look around and he said, "Now the government owns all this land, right?" I said, "No, people own this land." He couldn't understand because he was coming from a culture where the government owned everything. And I had a little bit different experience from you. Da lived with us. Da was 18.
Windhoek Da.
Yeah.
He lived with us.
Yes, he came to live
We
with
were
us
ready to
when
adopt him.
when they went to Buckner, he came to our house.
Okay,
Came to your
He
house.
could speak some English because in Vietnam he had worked with the missionaries. He came from a really godly Christian family. And he worked with missionaries, helping them learn Vietnamese, and so he picked up enough English. And so we took him home, and I thought, he's 18. He had just been 18 in March, and they came in April. He was a senior in high school, but of course he left with no diploma from high school. And I thought, if I put him in an American high school, he's not going to do well. So I went down to the downtown college of the University of Houston, and they put him in an English as a second language class. There were 36 people in the class. He was the youngest one. He studied day and night, and after so many weeks, 5 weeks, 3 months, I don't remember what it was, they had a test to see if they passed. Only 5 people in the class passed, but he was one of the 5 people.